I was 16 when my life changed completely. My mother remarried, and with that came a new house, a new routine, and a new family member, my stepbrother. He was just a year older than me, quiet, and carried an air of mystery that both unsettled and intrigued me. When I first met him, I expected awkwardness or distance, but instead, there was this calm between us, like an unspoken understanding neither of us could explain. He didn't talk much, but he noticed everything. I caught him looking at me more than once when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Our home felt peaceful, yet full of tension I couldn't name. During dinner, his eyes would flick to mine when no one was watching. A single glance lasted longer than it should, and the silence between us always seemed charged. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. It was curiosity, the kind that stays with you even when you try to ignore it. I found myself listening for his footsteps in the hall, feeling a flutter when we passed each other by the kitchen sink, catching the faint scent of his cologne when he walked past me. It lingered longer than it should have. At first, I thought I was imagining things. The way my skin warmed when our hands brushed accidentally, the way his voice softened when he asked if I needed help with something. It was subtle, nothing obvious, just enough to make my heart skip and my thoughts wander. I told myself it was just the closeness, the forced familiarity of living under the same roof. But deep down, I knew it was something more. Something I wasn't ready to admit, not even to myself. We weren't friends exactly, but we moved around each other in quiet synchronicity. He'd leave his headphones on the couch, and I'd put them back for him. I'd leave notes on the fridge about leftovers, and he'd smile at me the next day like he knew it was just an excuse to connect. His room was right across from mine. Late at night, I'd hear soft music leaking through the walls, and somehow it comforted me. It made me feel like I wasn't alone. He was there, just a few steps away, listening to the same world in his own way. The day I saw him helping my mom fix the garden lights, I noticed something shift inside me. He looked up, wiped his forehead with the back of his hand, and smiled at me. Not just a polite smile, but one that made my breath hitch. I turned away quickly, but the feeling lingered. I caught myself watching him more, noticing things I shouldn't. The curve of his jaw, the kindness in his eyes, the way he always seemed to be silently protecting the space around me. He never crossed a line, never said anything inappropriate, but something was undeniably growing between us. Something fragile, something real. It wasn't a crush. It wasn't rebellion. It was warmth. A slow-burning connection that snuck in between chores and casual glances. A feeling that said, "You're safe with me," without a single word spoken. I didn't know where it was going. I only knew I didn't want it to stop. The day everything changed, it wasn't planned. It started like any ordinary afternoon, but something in the air between us felt heavier, closer, like we were moving towards something neither of us could avoid. We were alone for the first time in days. No noise from the kitchen, no distant voices in the hallway, just us. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was full of something unspoken, and I felt it in every glance, every pause in our conversation, every time he looked at me and quickly looked away. He handed me a blanket when I shivered, and our fingers touched, barely, but enough to make me feel it everywhere. I didn't pull away. Neither did he. He just looked at me, not confused, not nervous, just there, fully present. I couldn't tell what he was thinking, but I felt his calm. It steadied my breath. I remember asking him about his favorite memory, and he smiled softly before telling me about a summer he spent camping with his dad, before everything got complicated. His voice had a tone I'd never heard before, vulnerable, real, like he was letting me in piece by piece. I told him about my childhood, how I always felt like I was waiting for something, someone, without knowing what. I didn't even realize the way I was looking at him until he looked back with the same expression I was trying to hide. There was no awkwardness, no hesitation, just something real passing between us. A kind of quiet knowing that didn't need words. I leaned into it without realizing, and for the first time, he didn't look away. He held my gaze, and I held his, and suddenly everything I had been questioning made sense. He didn't touch me first. I reached for his hand, and he let me. Our fingers locked, and for a moment nothing else mattered. The noise of right or wrong, should or shouldn't, all faded into silence. We sat there like that, hearts beating too loud, breaths too shallow, feeling everything but saying nothing. I could see it in his eyes. He was scared to want this, just like I was. But there we were, wanting it anyway. The way he looked at me didn't feel wrong. It felt like a truth neither of us had dared to speak aloud, until now. He whispered my name like it meant something, like it had weight. And when he did, I felt it in my chest. I didn't need him to say anything more. I just needed that moment, that pause, to know it wasn't one-sided. What I felt wasn't imagined. It was real. And he felt it too. I could tell by the way his hand squeezed mine, by the way he stayed close, by the way his breath matched mine, without even trying. The closeness between us wasn't physical. It was emotional, electric. Something that had been building in silence was now impossible to ignore. That night didn't end in declarations or lines crossed. It ended eye-awareness. We knew what we were stepping into. We just weren't ready to talk about it yet. But we didn't have to. That one look, that one held breath, told me more than words ever could. He was becoming my secret comfort, my quiet desire, and I was already his. We hadn't spoken it, but we both knew something between us had changed, and there was no going back. Everything after that night became more intense, more fragile. We didn't talk about what happened, but we both carried it with us like a secret tucked into our pockets. Our interactions became quieter, more intentional. A glance lasted longer. A touch lingered when it didn't need to. The way he stood near me felt different, like he was protecting something we hadn't named yet. I didn't know what we were becoming, but I knew it was no longer what we used to be. He started leaving small things behind for me to find. A playlist on my phone, a folded note on my pillow with a quote about feeling understood. I never saw him do it, but I always knew it was from him. I did the same, left a book on his desk with a marked page that mirrored how I felt. We were speaking without speaking, trying to say everything in silence. At night, I'd hear his music playing softly through the wall. Different now, slower, gentler, like he was trying to tell me something without saying a word. The world outside our rooms kept moving. School, friends, family dinners, but inside, we were living in a quiet storm. Every moment felt heightened, every exchange loaded. Once, he brushed a strand of hair from my face as I leaned over to pass him the salt. It was subtle. Our parents didn't notice, but I felt it in my stomach, and when I met his eyes, I knew he felt it too. We were walking a fine line, one we hadn't meant to create, but one we couldn't stop ourselves from following. One night, I found a sketchbook in his room while I was helping him look for a charger. He had drawn me, not posed or pretty, but real. Me laughing. Me curled up on the couch. Me staring out the window. I asked him why, and he didn't look away when he said, "Because I see you." No one had ever said that to me. Not like that. The air between us shifted. Everything that had been slowly building suddenly felt sharp, undeniable, like it was finally asking for a name. I kissed him that night. I didn't plan it. I just did. Soft, uncertain, but full of everything I hadn't said. And he kissed me back with the same hesitation, the same hunger, like we both knew it would change everything. It wasn't reckless or fast. It was quiet, full of unspoken emotion. The kind of kiss that says, "I've wanted this for longer than I can admit." When it ended, I couldn't speak. Neither could he. We just stood there, close, scared, and completely sure of what we just shared. Afterward, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything, what it meant, what it would become, what would happen if anyone found out. Guilt crept in, but it didn't feel like the kind that comes from doing something wrong. It was the guilt of wanting something so badly. It scared me. The next morning, we barely spoke. Our eyes met across the table, but we said nothing. Still, that silence was louder than words. We were both caught in something bigger than us. Something real. Something we couldn't deny anymore, no matter how hard we tried.